Welcome, everybody. So there's something I want to introduce, mostly just to, I just want to invite some chaos quickly into this discussion. So what I want to say is on 3, if you can all just shout out one word that describes your learning journey, okay? So you have to unmute so you can do it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Freedom!
Freedom!
Nice. Okay. Freedom. What was, I didn't hear any of the others.
Liberation.
Liberation. Okay.
Well, I said confusion.
Confusion.
Yeah.
I said curiosity.
Curiosity. Curiosity, freedom, liberation, confusion.
That's my favorite word, curiosity.
Yeah.
That is a great word.
So, Learning Reimagined, Unschooling as Decolonization. I just want to introduce you guys a little bit to what motivated me, what got me to put this conference together in this way. I think for those who know me, you'll know that I love community and interaction. So I do the things I can to make that happen. So it used to be picnics, and then we got fancy and we started having camps, and then we got fancier and we had a conference last year, and that was really great because it was a lot of work, but I got a lot out of being in that space, in that energy, and learning so much from everybody else. And so I knew I wanted to do another conference, and I've got a wish list of speakers that I wanted to have to spend a weekend with. And I knew I had to do a conference, otherwise I wasn't going to have them come spend a weekend with me. So, but also, you know, the focus on unschooling as decolonization has been something on my mind for quite a while now. And I feel it. I feel like it has this power for transforming society, for creating a more peaceful, just, accepting world, for not just for children, but for everybody. And I think what was missing before was that children were excluded from the social justice, from freedom, from liberation, from curiosity in the language we use to them and about them. And so I felt that this discussion doesn't happen often enough. And if somebody was doing this conference, this is where I would be, but nobody was. So I was like, okay, then I'm going to do it. And open up the discussion open up the space. Okay, not the discussion, open up the space for us to have this, to see what it could mean, because I don't know. From when I started the Facebook group to now, my thoughts have changed. It's evolving. And I think it's evolving between now and the conference as well. And I think at the end of that weekend, it's going to be, I don't know, but there'll be more shifts. So that's me. That's what Learning Reimagined is about. Okay, and I think when Akilah and I chatted about it, it felt right to both of us. This topic, what we had in mind, etc. And when I don't know what, but something made me go to Kaylin's exhibition on her master's, her fine art, critiquing the schooling system. It's like a long drive, and I don't like leaving home usually, but I really needed to do this. And I went in there and I was blown away with what her presentation was about, you know, the power of those images and her content. And I said, I'm doing this conference and this is the theme. and I'd love for you to participate in some way if you want to. And she was like, yes, I'd love to. That was there. And then I spoke, and then I obviously, Bayo was very high on that list. So when I contacted him, he said yes. So my question to you, Bayo, is what made you say yes so easily?
I thought you were going to say something like, will you marry me?
Well, if EJ wasn't around, maybe.
Oh, thank you, Zakia. And I just want to acknowledge my sisters here, Akilah, Kaolin, and everyone here. Thank you for showing up to this insurgency, this revolution, if you will. And from wherever you're calling in from, thank you for being here. And thank you for Zakia for calling us together. Well, let me answer this question by way of a story. Is that all right, Zakia?
Yeah.
Okay. And if anyone can't hear me, just let me know in case the leprechauns of the internet world strike. So I grew up in Nigeria, and well, I would say that one of the things that you get to hear as a child growing up in Nigeria, or you kind of get educated into, is the infallibility of parenting. The Yoruba people have a proverb, and it says that where you stand in your old age, or where you sit in your old age, will tell us where you stood in your youth, kind of, something like that. And there's another proverb, but this is biblical. Train a child in the way that the child should go, and when the child is old, he or she will not depart from it. It's almost like a formula for raising successful children. And I remember messing up as a kid many times, and by messing up, I mean literally messing up my room. I was very, very dirty, throwing my clothes about. And my mother would say stuff like, where did you get this from? Your father doesn't have this. He's very neat and pristine, and I don't have that trait. Where did you get that trait from? There was almost a kind of genetic determinism, if you will, that ran through the idea of parenting. That if you know the right formula, you could raise excellent children. And so I grew up with that understanding that there was a way to do it, that there was a way to make children what you wanted them to be. Of course, that entire assumption failed spectacularly when I had my first daughter, and I'll tell you a brief story about that. One day I was in Richmond, Virginia, and she was 2 years old at the time. She's 4 now. She's 5 now. And she was 2 years old at the time, and there was a swimming pool where we were, a community swimming pool. And she said, Dada, let's go swim. Now, early that morning, I decided that I was going to say yes to whatever my daughter decided or asked me to do. Just yes. It was like an experiment. Yes to whatever you say. Yes to whatever you ask. You want ice cream? Yes. I was trying out the experiment, parenting formula. And she said, let's go swim. So she dragged me out of the house. It was early in the morning, and we headed towards the swimming pool, except we weren't heading towards there. She missed a turn, and we were heading towards a lake that was just up ahead. Now, I don't swim, and she doesn't swim either. And so it was becoming terrible because I had promised to say yes to whatever she said. And along the way, I remember her leading every step of the process of the ritual. And she would say, Dada, take off your slippers. And I would take off my slippers. And she'd say, Dada, wear mine, wear my slippers. And then I would wear her, squeeze my feet, my giant feet into her little flip-flops. And then lo and behold, in a few seconds, we were at the lakeside. And she just said, let's be quiet. Now, after a few minutes of being quiet and experiencing some American joggers just nearby, wondering why we were just standing silent by the lake, I thought, this is a good moment to be a good father. You know, this is a Kodak moment. So let me just introduce some kind of wisdom to the moment, speak to my daughter, you know, just, this feels very, you know, right. This is the right moment to maybe tell her about life or stuff. And I proceeded to speak to her, and Alethea, that's her name, Alethea said, shh, like, just shut up, like, shh. And she put her hands on her finger on her lips, and I shut up. And yeah, all I can say is, and I narrate this whole story in my book, but all I can say is that in obeying my child, in letting her lead the way in that moment, I experienced, well, I didn't quite levitate. I didn't gain a halo. I didn't become enlightened. But in that moment, I experienced the world in a way that I hadn't experienced before. I write and speak about entanglement, quantum entanglement, and community, and racialization, and all the things that I like to talk about. But in that moment in time, I experienced the trees, the quacking of the ducks, the birds flying overhead in such a way that I felt it was a dramatic, extra textual experience. It was outside of my words. It was outside of poetry. It was very spiritual. And I tell this story most of the time to signal that maybe we're in a time when parenting is out of whack, when we have to recover a sense of fragility around notions of being in control. Maybe in my parents' time, they had a formula, but we've lost the recipe. We don't exactly know how to do it now, and maybe that's fine. And the thing is, maybe that's one of the reasons why I said yes to this, because I want to be touched in the fragility of my fatherhood. The first time I held my daughter, I promised her to be the best father I could be. I'm not sure how to do that. I'm not sure how to do it without community. But in these times, I think we need to acknowledge that we are out of our depths. And we need each other in more stunning ways than we could ever anticipate or articulate. That's one reason. The second reason why I think I said yes to this, Zakia, and to everyone here, is that, let me repeat the words of an elder, that to be spiritual is to be in awe. To be spiritual is to be in awe, is to experience wonder. And I think we're in a very powerful spiritual moment. It's the moment of a pause. And there's something really spiritually powerful about a pause, about stopping, about meeting an obstacle, about not being able to proceed any further. And I think that's what this time presents itself as, an obstacle. But my people say that when you reach an obstacle, it isn't necessarily the end of all things. It's not the end of the world. It's an opportunity to shapeshift. I think in times when there's the stunning rise of nationalist policies and fascism, when people are being decimated and exterminated and occluded and made invisible, unschooling, which is not just getting your child out of school, right? It's a whole ecology of responses, an ethical response or response to a time that is bigger than our words can convey. It's an ethical response to an obstacle. So I think one of the reasons why I said yes to this is that we need to stop, and we need a whole new way of questioning our questions. We need a way of listening to the earth and dwelling with that which is monstrous and bigger than our words can, carry and bear. The Yoruba people said that wisdom is like, it's like palm wine poured in the mouth to lubricate that which is too hard to eat. And maybe in a sense, we've come to a stop. We've come to a place we can no longer traverse. And when that happens, it's time to meet with each other. It's time to gather around. So my own view of unschooling, for instance, which is the kind of experiment we framed around our two children, Alethea and Kea, what we're doing is not just saying you're not going to school, is we're asking new questions about race, because unschooling is about race and racial justice. It's about time. It's about nationalism. It's about ecology. It's about all of these things. It's a revolutionary, powerful activism that brings us to a place where we critique everything, where we're invited to rethink everything. And that is the power of this moment, the power of now, to ask questions anew. Then finally, I think Zakia, the reason I said yes to you, to your beautiful proposal, is the most shocking. The third reason is the most shocking of all the other reasons, all the reasons combined. And that is because I want to. I simply want to. I want to show up. I know we tend to excuse or give reasons for the things we do and give arguments. Probably nothing could be revolutionary as just expressing desire. I'm drawn to this. I'm drawn to be in the company of those who want to be able to sit with their children and show up in the world in ways that are completely different, completely new, and completely irreverent at the same time. I don't know how to do that alone. I don't have the answers. The reason why I shouted confusion when you asked us to shout a word was because confusion is the greatest signal of community. If you think of the word confusion, it actually etymologically means a coming together, a commingling together. That's what confusion means. So confusion is an inviting of that which is greater than our lexicon can appreciate. And at the moment right now, the most externalized and otherized group of the human race are our children. And we need to know how to gently reapproach them as the sacred beings they are. And like I said, I don't know how to do that. We have to do it together. So yes, that's my yes, my stunning yes to your beautiful proposal.
Thank you. And I didn't know you were not having a yes day that day when I did it. Bayo, I mean, for me, listening to you, I think I feel like that was the missing piece in my whole journey and in the broader articulation of what we're doing as unschoolers, that we're not a bunch of hippies, crunching vegetables. It's good to crunch vegetables, but we're not, that's not what it's about, It's about transformation, social transformation. And I just find that conversation not always there.
Right.
Can I just hop over to Akilah?
Of course.
Yeah. And Akilah, if you could to just, I didn't give you a chance to say hi, yeah? It was on my list. But yeah, sorry.
It's all good.
If you, so I mean, we had lots of discussions and we always knew that this conference is going to happen with you, the next one. But as to the title and the theme and like, we both sort of got to it and agreed so easily, but can you share what about it made you, got you excited? Yeah.
For sure. Peace, everybody. I'm seeing new faces in the mix. It's really good to be here. It's really good to be here for many, many wonderful reasons. And for me, this work is important because it's one of the few places where I haven't felt that I needed to like segment myself from the beliefs that I'm questioning. And it's also a place in terms of unschooling and this whole work around what comes to me as raising free people. That's the terminology that I use, and not just raising children and not like raising each other, raising myself over and over again. This is a space where all of those things intersect to me very clearly. It's hard to break down like categories when you talk about living in a partnership-centered space with anyone, especially someone over whom you have power, you know, in the standard setting. So it's really important to me to be able to understand and tease out like the different ways that power is showing up in and around the world, and then and oppression as well. And for me, unschooling is the best place for me to see how these different forms of oppression intersect, and my participation in them, and my opportunities to do something different, which is mainly just to question it. I love how Bayo talks about the questioning, because that's one of the primary things for me too. I love Biggie, I love hip hop, and one of the things is like mad question asking. He talks a lot about mad question asking, and that's really important to me because this is the space where we get to question. This is the space where I get to know that I don't know, and that's such a powerful place to come from if I'm actually trying to be in harmony in any sense, in any sense. So for me, the work is very much personal, and it's also about amplifying the spaces where I'm seeing and hearing and feeling mad question asking, you know, where people are not afraid to question, and that we see the power of questioning, and that we're not asking questions to come up with like the definitive answer to the 7 keys of life. We're asking the questions to ask better questions, to feel through our bellies a little bit deeper, to remember how to do that, to remember the value of feeling through our bellies, to give ourselves time, especially as the adults, to be in spaces where we can get practice and language that only children, in my experience, remember and know how to do. Like over the 8 or 9 years that we've been unschooling, I've grown so much. And a lot of that is because of all of the disruption, you know, all of that's the term, all of the disruption that's been happening. And I feel like these disruptors that come up in unschooling starts out with an educational focus. I always like to say that I think unschooling is a portal to all the things, because it started out, at least for us, like, oh, you know, we're not into the school system and all of that. And then it just, you realize that there's really nothing that isn't connected to the work of raising free people. And so this is a powerful space for me to be in community with people who are not afraid of questions, and who recognize that all of these isms are interconnected, and that there's an opportunity here to raise free people, including ourselves, to look at unschooling as a form of decolonization, not just systemically, but really, really personally. Like to really take the work personal, and to understand that that doesn't mean that you need to present a beautiful thesis, but that you got to remember how to feel through your belly. And there's nothing like being with babies at all forms. My girls are 14 and 12, and I still call them my babies. They're good with it. You know, there's nothing like being around babies, somebody's babies, to remind you of the value and the relevance of sort of feeling through things. And I think it's a powerful space to be in. Yeah.
Akilah, love you so much for beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you for saying those things. I want to just piggyback on some of the things you said about raising ourselves. That is So here's something I'll say to that. I read recently about a phenomenon called microchimerism. And microchimerism is the idea, is the biological idea or notion that when a mother holds a child in her belly, she doesn't just merely propagate cells from her body to the emergent fetus. The fetus also radically changes the mother. So it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. They're both mothering each other in that very moment. It's not just merely the case that they mother each other, but for a first child that has left the belly, any other child that comes into that belly afterwards is also mothered by the first child, if you will. And they call it microchimerism because, of course, the word chimeric means monstrous. In a sense, there's something monstrous happening here. We're not quite parents as such. We're also children. We're caught in the middle. And maybe we should call ourselves transparents because there's something trans networking happening here. And maybe that's the gist of, a beautiful gist of unschooling as well. People say, for instance, to EJ and me, that why do you call it unschooling if she's never been to school? And it's a good question. We tend to respond by saying, it's not quite that we're unschooling her, we're unschooling ourselves by listening to her, by making space for her. We're giving ourselves the permission not to have a solution. Because schooling was the effort to resolve the ontology of children. It was the effort to reduce it down to a few substrates, to say that we figured it out. If you send your child through that block right there, then you have it going with you. Yeah. Right now, we can say that we have no solution. Unschooling is not a solution. It's not a product. It's not an item. It's not a set of ideologies. It's an openness to the wonder of being in relationship to the unexpected. And you capture that beautifully, Akilah, by saying where there is an opportunity here. We're curious about staying here together, staying in this wound together without healing it, without, wanting to feel the silence with words because it gets awkward. Staying and lingering in that silence, in this deep space of need and sharing. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the trust factor, that's one of the most powerful things that is developing out of, and I very much call it the work, because I work, it works me, it works all around, like this work, this whole idea of being able to trust, and not just trust children, but just to trust. Again, I love how in this space we have an understanding that this isn't something we do to children or even for children. It's something that we are feeling through. And that's that the term feeling is such a powerful thing for me that we, I think, have gotten away from, because we want to do, we want to solve, we want to resolve, we want to, and we want to state eloquently. And we want our children to state eloquently because they're a reflection of us. You get this from your mom, as you were saying, Bayo, how your parents were like, where did this come from? All of these ideas of things we put upon or we put in front of, that now, for me, through unschooling, you just get to lay all of it out and around, and you get to just be with it. And it's such a powerful space, because all of these solutions now become so ridiculous, because all you're doing is allowing yourself to be and to seek and explore. And I love that you use the word ecology, because it really develops this ecology of trust, that I trust that I don't need to know. I trust where things are going. I trust where they might not be going. Like, that's why the term unschooling doesn't bother me at all, because I think a lot of these things are tied into schoolishness. And as we start to back away from that schoolishness, it's important to realize that it is an undoing, and that it is uncomfortable, and that it's good that it's uncomfortable. That disruption is important. So that's why I love the term unschooling. Let it disrupt you. Let it arrange you. Let it unravel you, because that's the beginning.
wanted to, and if anybody else wants to say, there's no script or format, so just jump in, okay?
You're kidding. There's no script.
There's
No
Really?
curriculum.
the scripts, yeah, but I've dropped it. I was going to be very structured about it. My school mind said structure this and let it flow in a specific way, but my spirit defied my mind, thankfully. One of the things that, Akilah was saying something, he said something about, from your belly. And I know Bayo talks about belly activism, yeah? Mm-hmm. Activism that comes from the gut. So that synergy there, but what I wanted to say is,
yes, Irma, yes.
Yes. You're going to love Irma, Akilah.
Already.
Irma is my big sister.
I love it.
Yeah. Is that it's weird because I'm convening this conference with questions like I don't know, and I actually feel really comfortable to bring all these people together, even though, and I don't know, but I do know. There are things I know. I just can't articulate it. I know I wanted Akilah, and I know I wanted Bayo, and I know I want these discussions. I don't know what they're going to look like or feel like, but I know that even though I don't know what I know, I do know it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So, is Kaolin? Yeah, we should start. Kaolin's still here. So Kaolin's wasn't on my list of speakers. I actually didn't really know her all that well, and it was just, how long was I there? An hour at the gallery exhibition, which changed everything. So Kaolin, I just wanted to say sorry. Also, I didn't give you a chance to even say hello. Hello. And if you can just, what you were equally excited. I mean, you were at an exhibition, you were hosting it. There were all these people around you, and you didn't really take time to say, "Okay, I'll think about it and get back to you." You said, "Yeah, I'd love to be." That was your response. So, if you can just maybe give some background to you and why you'd love to be.
Well, I went to the last conference, and it really, it kind of kick-started a lot of my thinking and affirmed a lot of my thinking. And the process of research, doing my master's on unschooling and working with my children as co-researchers was profoundly anti-establishment. And it was this absolute contradiction between the wonder and excitement and amazement of what was going on with my kids, and then, my work in schools and teaching in a formal sense and critiquing the education system was a very, very painful experience for me, and it sort of still goes on. And it's really exciting to have the opportunity to collaborate with all of you at the conference. And one of my particular interests is collaboration and what happens with collaboration. And the title of my work was actually Sample, Improvise, and Collaborate. So using those three sort of mechanisms to learn through. And so, yeah, I'm just really, really excited to see, what will happen in the conference and how we can all learn together and, sort of decolonize ourselves.
whatever that means. I still sometimes struggle to articulate. I'm like, I don't know. I just know it needs to be different.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big process of thousands of years of unwrapping and having this constantly sort of critical approach to everything, and it can be quite exhausting. And I'm just looking back here, the confusion that Bayo brought up, I just think it's a great way to look at it. We're collaborating in our confusion, and there's so many unknowns, but there's so much wonder. I think that's kind of my word for today, is the wonder at the amazement at what happens when we allow that freedom to happen. So that was why I said yes straight away, because there was absolutely no doubt in my mind. And the theme is just so relevant and important, and I needed to be there.
I'm still unmuted. Is there anybody else that would like to, any questions, say something? Shivani looks like he's itching to say. Megan?
Yes, I'm itching.
Yeah. Go.
That was just, yes, amazing to hear all of you speak, and just felt so connected with it and inspired. And the thing that just really came out for me was, it's sort of, children are so connected with their yes, what is deeply meaningful for them, for who they intrinsically are. And it's almost like as parents, we have to learn our way back, or find our way back to connecting with what is our yes kind of thing, what is deeply who we are, that sort of belly kind of connection to, yeah, I want to do that, kind of like, almost like, yes, I want to do that. I know I want to be there kind of thing. There's been so many generations of children being told, no, they can't climb a tree, they'll fall, or they can't do this, that they learn that, their yes becomes a no, and then they take it into adulthood, and that confusion, and it it's like sort of that wanting to reconnect back to who we really are in a way. And that's sort of what I took from what everybody was saying, and just really inspired.
Go, Irma.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
I wanted to add on to what was being said regard to Bayo's element of the ecology, and what Megan said with regard to this idea that we use back. So this means that there is something that it does exist in every single one of us, on the simple basis of being human, that we feel that is sort of dormant or is asleep, and there's sort of the or a craving to go back, once again using this word back. And I came to revelation in thought this week about the idea of decolonizing, and for the African context, and what it meant for me, specifically with the words being used, unschooling. We refer to the institution as the schooling element in this word. We basically uninstitutionalizing education, taking education of the school, taking education out of the varsity, and putting education back into the trees, putting education back into nature, putting education back into families, putting education back into funerals, putting education back into weddings. And once again, a play on this word back, something that we engage on a day-to-day basis. And I believe for this idea of decolonizing education, it got to do with, for me, the institutional element and the sort of dominion over knowledge that the institutions project, that unless you go to a certain institution for a certain amount of time, your knowledge is not creditable or is not worthy. Unless you go to a specific varsity, your knowledge is not credible. And that's once again looking at deschooling or decolonizing institution and restoring what we already know. And that is that education is, you can't have dominion over this thing, first of all. Secondly, it's for everyone and anyone at any moment, at any time, any age. And I'm not talking about age in our critical corporal way of thinking. I'm talking about age in terms of multi-generational. So my lessons that come in my genetic code that are passed down to me from my previous forefathers and 5 mothers. Idea that going forward, everything that what I then do to my genetic code, and now that modifies the future. Once again, education out of the institution, actually in my body, in my genetic code, in my brain, in my perception of the world. And just based on everything that was said, I feel that it coincides with this idea of, or rather a curiosity to the idea of uninstitutionalizing education that will give us premise or quest to find education in other parts of the world and other parts of ourselves.
Yes, Vani. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Irma was going to say something. Irma, yeah.
I was, and then Giovanni also picked up on what I wanted to add to what Megan was saying while you were talking. I wanted to say, yes, we have to know that most of our current education systems are, from everything we can see, not really conducive to creating human beings, alive, awake, allowed to be full of what they are, human beings. And it reminded me that in probably about 8 or so years ago, I was thinking with a global group of people on the human project, like the continuation of the human project. And somewhere in those discussions, this came up for me as very strong. Who do we have to become? What version of human are we evolving towards that make us the humans that are capable of and worthy of becoming and building the world that we want our children to inherit? And I mean, you know, it's looking quite dire. So even if it is dying, how do we want to die? How do we want to be human? And what does it mean to be human? And how do we learn together with our children, like Bayo was saying? Because a lot of what we are is wrong, right? We are even the structures that we find ourselves in kind of prevents us from popping into the house of the neighbor and being the person fully that you want to be, because there's walls on all kinds of levels. Anyway, so I wanted to add just that thing of what does it mean to be human?
Thank you for that, Irma. Yes, yes. And I love how you said, like there it is again, the trust, like trusting whatever it's looking like and what that means for us. So if we are dying, if this is all going in the worst possible way, what does it need to look like in each moment for us to feel a connection of humanness to it. That for me is just, you know, and also Bayo mentioned the pause. That feels like one of those opportunities to pause and say, what do I want to do with what I'm feeling right now? Again, that's so opposite of this solution-oriented thing. This is why this work for me is tied to so many different things. This is why, for me, even with things like race, you know, being from one place and then growing up in another place. I'm from Jamaica, where race and class look one way. And then in the US, it looks a different way, similar but different. But the colonization, you know, that part is definitely a thread. And for me, that's why the term decolonization, I've even had one friend who in her community of primarily indigenous folks, they use, even though they don't like the term unschooling, decolonization works a lot more in their minds, even for folks who are not of the mind of any aspect of like self-directed living or being, because we can all recognize the ways that we have been colonized. As you said, Irma, even the setup of our structures that you can't, you know, your neighbor is someone that you could just not know if that's the decision that's made, because everything is set up for that. Your kid is someone you could not know. Your partner is someone you could not know, because there are all of these knowings that are just piled on top of the old knowings. And nobody is pausing to say, whatever this is like right now, where's the humanity in it? What might that feel like? What might look or feel different or better? Nobody's willing to do that because we are busied. I think that's a huge part of colonization. You are busied with all of the solutions, all of the things that will make something quote unquote better, so much so that you have no space to just be. And if you are not just being, then everything outside of you it feels like a better option, including institutionalized learning. You know, you feel like all of the things are tucked into something that you just got to figure out how to get to.
Exactly. And for me in my life in Johannesburg, that's why I've chosen a meditative dance movement form to use music and movement and being there with another human, and very much the tract of connecting with self, body, and then with an other, and then with a collective, and then with that back integrating back into self, as a means by which to help people to find some of that pause. And I also think that it is very, very important for all of us to model, to relearn, to teach, to learn the art of being together, and of being able to see each other as other human beings first, and to turn to one another in that way. I mean, it's a small thing. I'm just saying it's a thing that I've chosen to do as a practical enlivenment of my very kind of mental, intellectual kind of life, and practical of running children and household. But it's creating that pause and awareness in it, not only of self, but of other.
I'm just going to add that this is the reason why we gathered then. It's because we need new rituals to hold these voices, these conversations, these emergent values that that are still quite inchoate, but are still valuable and meaningful and useful. I'm looking for a word actually to describe something that feels material and tactile and meaningful to my experience, not just here with you all, but with my daughter and my son and with those that I call my tribe. There's a moment when the familiar becomes strange and you don't know what to do. It's just a liminal moment. It's smaller than a second. I don't know, maybe maybe you're in the forest or you're staring at a stone and admiring the contours of the stone. And then suddenly the stone moves and you find that you were wrong all this while. And it's actually a big frog or some kind of toad. That moment when the familiar shifts into the territory of the strange, of the queer, seems to describe what we're experiencing now. And there is a tendency to want to say, we figured this out, so all we need to do is this and this and this, but that's not quite, and I'm glad none of us are saying that here. What we're holding space for is gratitude to all the beings, all the ancestors, the bacterial activisms, the non-human alliances that have made this moment possible. We are not the ones creating this pause. It may sound like a hippie thing to say, like a very fluffy thing to say. But I assure you this, for those of us who are just getting into this or curious about this, it's really a deep invitation to stay with those things that are real, that are authentic, but there's no space out there in the world to actually hold that. So this is one of the reasons why I really encourage us to gather at this forthcoming event, so that, and even if you can't make it, great. Let's find a way to keep in touch and form a mycelial network of irreverence so that we can build rituals together, capacities together to stay with the strange. And so, yeah, that's thank you, sisters, Akilah, Irma, my brother, Giovanni, everyone.
Thank you. You need to unmute, Irma.
Thank you, Zakia. That's what I was saying.
Oh, sorry. I'm a bit slow. Yeah, I think we on to 1628. So if anybody has any closing thoughts, you need to go. Any Akilah, oh, Bridget, yeah, go.
I just want to say that I'm grateful to Bayo. I learned a new word, that microchimerism. Because I always said when the mother makes the baby makes the mother. There is a mutuality. And I believe, that my unschooling journey with my child started really when I had him in my belly. And the biggest moment of unschooling, I guess, myself was when I walked out of the obstetrician's office when I was maybe sort of in the second third of the pregnancy, and I wanted to discuss home birth. And I was 43 then, and they all thought I was crazy. And it was a woman. She said, "No, don't go there. I'll look after you." And it was kind of such a bang, it was like this missing mutuality. I didn't need someone to look after me. I didn't need someone to partner with me. And because I was in that learning journey with my child, I had no effing clue, but I had a trust. So I developed in that journey really that trust already. And maybe if I hadn't developed that trust, I wouldn't actually never decided to have a child. We both, older parents, and it was a whole journey of trusting ourselves and trusting life. So that was actually starting before, long before we talked of parenting in a way. So I'd like to start really at the very beginning with this thought of unschooling or deschooling, and think of this mutuality in every aspect of our becoming human together. Yeah. And I've learned so much from my child. I mean, he's 70 now, but it has been sort of that ongoing journey of learning together.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful, gentle home birth. And this man, who was a doctor, who was horrified first when I said home birth, he was very grateful.
He still looks horrified.
Yeah, it's an ongoing journey. There's more horror to come.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, no?
Zeki, did you call me?
No, but
Okay.
I thought I heard somebody speaking.
Julia, is that Julia? Are you unmuted on purpose?
Hi. Yeah.
Oh, Julia,
Julia.
right.
Yeah.
How do I talk? So I actually joined the stream late, but it was just, I'm so glad to have stumbled across this group of people. I find it, because I'm sort of, not close to the Joburg community, I'm sort of in Cape Town, and it's difficult to unschool without community, without close community and a more tangible human connection. It's so difficult when you're surrounded by people that have completely different worldview and perspective. And I mean, as decolonization, it's incredible what you were saying, Akilah, about how everyone can relate, can understand what that is and feel it in their belly. And I just thank you all for the sort of profound words of today. You might have noticed I've been writing everything down. I've got a whole, it's been great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you too, Julia.
It's hard to read body language on virtually, yeah? Thanks, Julia. I thought Adam was gonna unmute. No. Okay. So, did you want to say something, Shivani?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're unmuting and muting, so I
just wanted to dive into what Julia was talking about this idea of community, also what Bayo and Akilah and Zakia, what me and you spoke about, and that education cannot happen in isolation. That is what sort of the institutionalization of education has done. It has taken education and put it in a building, which is not actually education, it's schooling.
Don't even think about it.
And the need for community and the need for these platforms and the need for this projection and for, what is the biblical word for it? When you take the gospel and you go house to house knocking on doors?
So evangelizing, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
For lack of better words, but this evangelizing of the future, the evangelizing of the past, and the evangelizing of our presence under the basis of humans, and also something that I have to leave everybody with, a thought or question that I have, is the idea of language, the idea of decolonizing education, and specifically looking at the word human and how the idea of being inhuman has sort of been associated, or is an English word. And in discussions with someone, I think last week, it was said that if you can understand the idea of being human and being inhumane, there's sort of an option to be inhumane. It's like an availability to become inhumane. There's this situation in language that gives us option to be something we're not. And once again, just the sensitivity of language to describe ourselves, our past and our future, and how that affects education, or the idea of education.
Yeah. True. Beautiful. Shivani's got something really nice planned for the Learning Reimagined Conference. It's not something we can describe. It's something you have to experience, I think. But immersive, and what's the other word, Shivani?
Shocking.
Okay. Shocking, okay, fine. But in a good way. In a good way. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was part of what Akilah was talking about. I wouldn't like to use the word uncomfortability, but let's refer to the Bayo's definition, the becoming familiar, and back again to unfamiliar becoming familiar. We are here to remind ourselves, or what is the saying? We are here to remember our future and wait, I forgot now the saying. I'm going to kill it. But something to the extent of remembering our future and forgetting our past. Yeah,
Forgetting our
remembering
future.
our future, forgetting our past.
Okay. Okay.
And we got a big future that we need to remind ourselves of.
Yeah.
On that idea of being human.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. It's still open if anybody wants to say anything. Otherwise, I will then, if we've run out of things to say, we can say it in October, or we can say it at another time again. Yeah?
Yes, too much shouldn't be said here, actually. I was hoping we'll get some ice cream at this point in time. But given that there's no ice cream, Zakia.
Yeah, it's 37. I had ice cream 7 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This shocks.
Thank you, Bayo, for making your time available. Thank you, Akilah, for waking up early for us. And Kaolin for rushing back home. And for all of you to just come and be part of this discussion. I feel enriched already and more energized to continue, and I'm positive about where we're going. So yeah, I'm really grateful for all of you for coming, participating, sharing, and we'll chat soon again.
Yes, thank you for this. This was a good start to the morning.
Yes.
It was.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.
Brigitte, Akilah, Zakia, bye.
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 Bye, everyone.
Go.
Bye.